a topic that has garnered a lot of attention lately is compliance relating to depicting minors in an audiovisual content, right? And another myth in the industry that relates to casting minors is that it's as simple as simply getting signatures from their parents. Do you think that's true, or is it way more complicated than that?
So that's a very important question, Adarsh, especially given the current developments in the industry. A common myth is that casting minors in films or any audiovisual content just entails taking signatures from their natural guardians or parents. But it is a lot more complicated than that. Okay. And there are multiple laws and guidelines where children who are involved as artists, which need to be complied with by the production houses.
Right.
To give you a few examples, we have the POCSO Act, which is your Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act of 2012, and which
Right.
was also amended in 2019. Then there is a Child Labour Prohibition and Regulation Amendment, which came in 2016 and which basically replaced the earlier Act of 1986.
Right.
There are rules there under of 2017, which again, replaced the earlier rules of 1988. We have the Juvenile Justice Act. And most importantly, we have the NCPCR guidelines. So the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights, which we call as NCPCR, they have their own guidelines issued with respect to the child participation in entertainment industry or for their commercial and entertainment activity.
Sure.
And these guidelines earlier, there were 2011 guidelines, which have recently been replaced by the 2023 guidelines to align it with the extant laws on child welfare. Depending on the statute, a child is defined as anyone either under 14 years of age or 18 years of age.
Right, that makes sense. So, Anushri, could you give us some insights on some on-set compliances required to be adhered to if there's a minor on set? Specifically with some inputs on the NCPCR guidelines?
Sure. So the NCPCR guidelines outline several critical points.
Okay.
For one, disclaimer, right? So the production houses must include a disclaimer at the beginning of the content stating that the measures were taken to prevent abuse or exploitation of any child involved.
Okay.
That's absolutely critical. Another important one is taking adequate permissions from the district magistrate. So producers have to obtain a permission from the district magistrate before involving a child in any production.
Okay.
And this permission remains valid for 6 months. This has to be procured in furtherance of Rule 2C of the child labor rules, which was introduced in 2017. And basically, it's important in relation to this requirement that the permissions are procured before the shoot happens and not subsequent thereto. A lot of production houses are probably not aware about this requirement and they happen to miss it. Some of the other critical guidelines are, appropriate roles for the children. They should not be cast in scenarios which is not suitable for their age, and the content must not expose them to any ridicule or mental harm. The presence of a guardian or a parent on set, there are different requirements depending upon the age of the child. So, for instance, if for children under 6 years of age, they need to have a parent or a guardian present on the set. And for infants, if there is a shooting over an hour, a registered nurse is also required. The production houses have to take care of safety measures, access to nutritious food, clean water, medical care, all of that needs to be secured.
Right.
The school hours of the children should not be affected. Ultimately, these are children welfare laws, right? There are also strict guidelines in terms of the number of working hours. So, for instance, minors cannot work for more than 5 hours per day and they must have adequate breaks. Adolescents have slightly different requirements. And these regulations also provide that, at least 20% of the child's earnings must be in some fixed account for them to access when they attain adulthood. So that, so that it's not, abused in any manner. Additionally, it's critical to avoid portraying children in activities like smoking, drinking, which could normalize such behavior.
Okay.
That's very informative, Anushri. Thanks for that. So, what could be the legal consequences for filmmakers who do not adhere to these regulations?
See, non-compliance would result in penalties under all of the statutes which I mentioned above, and these are like criminal offences. So it could lead to imprisonment, which could be up to 3 years, or fine, and there are different rules given under the different statutes. But yeah, it could be up to 10,000 rupees or so.
Right. Right.
So, Anushri, would social media intermediaries also have obligations on them in relation to, having content available on the platform that involves depiction of minors?
So this area is actually evolving, especially under the POXO Act and the IT Act and the rules. In fact, recently, in the matter of Just Rights for Children Alliance versus S. Harish, the Supreme Court emphasized that platforms cannot claim the safe harbor provision under Section 79 of the IT Act unless they perform due diligence by removing child pornography and reporting it.
Okay.
The NCPCR has also recommended that social media platforms seek verifiable parental consent in line with the DPDP Act, which is your Digital Personal Data Protection Act of 2023. Also, recently, the NCPCR has urged the MIB to mandate that the OTT platforms they should display disclaimers before any adult content is shown, thereby cautioning the viewers about the legal consequences of minors accessing such content.
Sure.
And this is actually in line with Section 11 of the POXO Act, which deals with sexual harassment involving minors, and Section 75 of the Juvenile Justice Act, which deals with cruelty towards children. So violating these provisions could really result into imprisonment, fines, or both, which I mentioned earlier.
Sure.
And while this has not been put to test yet by the MIB and they've not yet implemented the measures, it's absolutely critical for the producers as well as the platforms to assign adequate importance to the welfare of the minors.
Sure.
Right, right. Thank you so much, Anushri, for sharing such useful insights with us. I'm sure that was new information for a lot of us, including me and Adarsh.